helpless, broken, humiliated. She was curled against the base of a dry cottonwood, her dress torn, her legs bruised, and her breath coming in short. Shallow pulls like each one might be her last. The sun burned down over the Wyoming plain, hot and merciless, turning the grass to gold and the air to fire, and still she did not move. A shadow fell over her. Boots stopped inches from her bare feet, dirt hanging still in the air around them. And for a long second, the man said nothing at all. Silas Boone stood there, tall, weathered, 50 years carved into his face. His hand rested close to the Colt at his hip, the kind of habit a man keeps after seeing too many things go wrong, too fast. He looked down at the girl, and his eyes did not soften. Not at first. Her fingers twitched. Then she flinched hard when his shadow shifted closer, as if she had already learned what came next when a man stepped too near. "Please," she whispered, voice cracked, barely there. "Don't take me back." Silas crouched slowly, boots grinding against dry dirt, studying her without a word. Her cheek was swollen. Her arms were marked. Her dress clung to her in places it shouldn't. This wasn't a fall. This wasn't an accident. He reached out, then stopped halfway, like even he knew one wrong move would send her breaking apart again. "I ain't taking you anywhere you don't choose," he said, low and steady. She didn't believe him. Not yet. When he finally lifted her, she tensed like prey in a trap, weak but still fighting inside. From a distance, a ranch hand on a passing horse slowed just enough to see it. And then the man turned his horse away and rode on. Silas didn't take her to town. He didn't ride toward the sheriff. He didn't call for help. He took her somewhere no decent man should have taken a girl in that condition. And by sundown, half the town had already decided what kind of man that made him. He carried her past the road, past the eyes of anyone who might ask questions, straight toward a small, forgotten cabin sitting alone at the edge of his land. Inside, he laid her down on a narrow bed, stepped back, and stayed near the door, like a man who knew he didn't belong any closer. Outside, the dry air moved across the empty field, carrying heat more than breeze. Inside, a young woman lay in a stranger's cabin, bruised, exhausted, and completely at his mercy. And in a town not far away, people had already started asking the same question. What kind of man takes a girl like that and doesn't bring her back? She woke up fast, her eyes snapped open, her body jerking like she expected hands on her again, like she expected pain to follow right behind the light. But there was no one touching her, just a small wooden room, a narrow bed, a chair near the wall, and a man standing by the door. Silas didn't move closer, didn't speak right away. He just watched, the way a man watches a wounded animal that might bolt or bite if you step wrong. "You're safe here," he said. Quiet, steady. She shook her head almost instantly. "No," she whispered. "No, I ain't." Her hands clutched the blanket tight against her chest, like it was the only thing between her and the world. "Where am I?" "My place," Silas answered. That didn't help. Her breathing picked up again. "You need to take me someplace safe," she said. Then just as fast, her voice broke. "No, don't take me back, just not there." Silas caught that. Not there. That told him more than anything else. He stepped outside for a moment, leaving the door open just enough so she could see he wasn't trying to trap her. A few minutes later, an older woman from the next ranch came in, carrying water and clean cloth. No questions, just quiet work. That helped more than words ever could. By the time the sun dipped lower, Clara finally spoke without shaking. "My father's dead," she said. Silas leaned against the wall, arms folded, listening. "He owned land south of here. Good grazing land." She swallowed hard. "He said it'd be mine." Silas nodded once. Then her voice dropped lower. "My mama married Amos last winter." Silas didn't react, but his eyes sharpened just a bit. "After Pa got sick, Amos started handling everything. Cattle, money, papers." She looked down at her hands. "He wanted me to sign it over. Said I couldn't run a place like that." Silas let out a slow breath. "Did you?" She shook her head. "He hit me the first time I said no." Silas didn't interrupt. He had seen men like Amos before, and he knew talking rarely fixed anything once it got this far. "My mama stood there," Clara said, her voice going flat now. "Didn't say a word. She didn't just stand there. She locked the door, but a mother locking the door on her own daughter. That was something else. He's already talking to a clerk in Laramie," she went on, trying to make it look legal. Silas straightened a little. "You got proof it ain't—" She hesitated, then nodded. "My pa told me once, if I ever couldn't trust nobody in that house." She looked up at Silas, eyes clearer now, but still carrying something broken inside. "He said I should look where his old horse used to drink, every morning." Silas didn't speak, but now he understood one thing real clear. If they went to town without that paper, she'd lose everything, and maybe more than that. Outside, the wind picked up, pushing dry grass against the cabin walls. Silas turned his head toward the open land, thinking, because if what she said was true, then by tomorrow morning, they wouldn't just be looking for papers. They'd be running out of time. The next morning came in hot and dry. No clouds, no mercy. Silas didn't wait. He saddled up before the sun climbed too high, then looked over at Clara, who was already standing, already dressed, like she knew time wasn't on her side anymore. "You ride?" he asked. "I have to," she said. That was enough. They didn't head straight into the center of Laramie. Silas wasn't that careless. He took the long edge of town, keeping to the quieter side and where fewer eyes asked questions. But in a place like that, it didn't matter how careful you were. People noticed. By the time they reached the first row of buildings, the looks had already started. A man outside the general store leaned over to another and muttered something under his breath. A woman paused mid-step, watching Clara like she already knew the story. Silas felt it. Clara felt it worse. Then they saw Amos, standing right out front near the hitching post, like he'd been waiting. Martha stood beside him, arms folded, face tight, like nothing had happened, like she hadn't watched her own daughter get broken down piece by piece. "There she is," Amos said loud enough for half the street to hear. Didn't sound relieved, didn't sound worried, sounded like a man who just found something that belonged to him. Clara's hand tightened on the saddle. Silas stepped slightly forward. Not aggressive, just enough. "She ain't going with you," he said. Amos laughed once. "That's so." He took a step closer, slow, confident, like he knew the ground he was standing on belonged to him. "That girl's my family," he said, "and you got no business keeping her out all night." There it was. The story had already been told, and it wasn't the truth. Clara tried to speak, but Martha cut in quick. "Honey, you're confused," she said. Soft voice, sharp eyes. "Come home." Clara froze. For a second, she looked like a child again. Then Amos reached out. That was enough. Silas moved. Fast. Silas didn't wait for Amos to reach her. He drove his shoulder hard into Amos's chest, knocking the wind out of him, then brought a short right up from the hip. Amos staggered back, spitting dust and blood, before swinging wide and wild. Silas didn't rush it. He stepped in close and hit again. Dust kicked up as the two men collided, boots digging into hard ground, fists heavy, no wasted motion. Amos was younger, stronger in burst, but Silas didn't fight to win. He fought to stop him. One solid hit dropped Amos to a knee. The street went quiet, but not for long. "That's enough," someone shouted. Sheriff stepped in, hand near his gun, eyes moving between the two men. And just like that, the moment shifted, because now it wasn't about truth, and it was about what people believed they saw. And what they believed wasn't on Silas's side. Clara turned, looking around, hoping someone would listen. But no one stepped forward, not one. Then Martha moved in close, voice low, almost gentle. "Come on," she said. "Let's get you home." And this time, Clara didn't fight. Silas watched as she was led away, back onto that wagon, back toward the place she ran from. He stood there in the dust, breathing heavy, knowing one thing clear as day. If he didn't move fast, she wasn't coming back out again. Now listen, if you've made it this far, you already know this ain't just another story. So hit that subscribe button, grab a drink, and settle in. Tell me what time it is where you are and where you're listening from. Because what Silas does next is where things start getting real complicated. Silas didn't go back to town. He didn't argue. Didn't chase the wagon. That would have been a mistake. He rode the other way. Out past the dry fields, past the fence lines, most folks didn't bother checking anymore. Straight toward the old Whitfield land Clara had talked about. The place felt different without cattle moving through it. Quiet in the wrong way, like something had already been taken from it. Silas slowed his horse near the broken-down corral. Old wood. Sun cracked, half leaning into the dirt. He looked around once, slow and careful. Then he dismounted. If I were an old man who didn't trust his own house, he muttered to himself, I wouldn't leave anything where hands could reach easy. He walked toward the water trough. The wood was worn smooth from years of use, edges softened by time and animal. Right beside it, one plank didn't sit right. Too clean, too straight. Silas crouched down, ran his fingers along the edge, then pried it loose with the butt of his knife. Underneath, a small tin box, no lock. Just wait. He opened it slow. Inside were folded papers, wrapped tight in cloth, kept dry all this time. Silas didn't smile. He just nodded once. Smart man, he said under his breath. He didn't read every word right there. Didn't need to. The seal. The names. That was enough. Clara had been telling the truth. All of it. He stood up, tucked the papers inside his coat, and turned back toward his horse, because now this wasn't just about helping her. Now it was about time, and time was running thin. Back at the Whitfield house, things were getting tighter. Clara sat at the table, hands in her lap, a paper laid out in front of her. Amos stood behind her chair. Martha leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching. Just sign it, Amos said. Make this easy. Clara didn't touch the pen. You already decided everything without me, she said, voice quiet. You don't need my name. You just want it. Amos's jaw tightened. Girl, don't push this. Martha stepped in then, softer tone, colder words. You can't run that land, she said. You'll lose it in a year, maybe less. Clara looked at her. Really looked this time. And you think he won't? That hit something. Not enough to stop it, but enough to show the truth was sitting right there between them. Amos slammed his hand on the table. Sign it. Silence. Then Clara moved, not toward the pen, toward the cup of water. Her hand shook just enough to look real. Martha stepped forward, unlocked the side door to let air in. That was the moment. Clara shoved the chair back hard, knocking it into Amos's legs, then ran. Her hand brushed the kitchen knife on the table, and for a second she took it, not to fight, just to feel she wasn't empty-handed. Through the kitchen, out the door, barely hitting the ground before Amos was after her, boots pounding behind her. She didn't look back, didn't dare. The fence came into view. Too far. Then a hand grabbed her arm, hard. She cried out, trying to pull free. Gotcha. Amos growled. And then a voice behind him, low. Calm. You should let her go. Amos turned, and that's when he realized he wasn't the one in control anymore. Amos barely had time to turn. Silas was already there, not rushing, not shouting, just standing solid like a fence post that had seen too many storms to move now. Let her go, he said again. Amos tightened his grip for a second, like he was thinking about pushing it further. Then he looked into Silas's eyes, and something shifted. Not fear, not yet, but doubt. That was enough. His hand loosened. Clara pulled free and stepped back fast, breathing hard, her whole body shaking, but still standing. Silas moved just enough to place himself between her and Amos. No more words needed. The next morning, they brought it all to the county office in Laramie. It wasn't a full trial, not yet. But with the original papers, the father's letter, and a few men who knew Elias Whitfield's hand, the truth was finally too plain to ignore. Clara Whitfield was the rightful owner, not Amos, not anyone else. Amos tried to talk his way out, then tried anger. Neither worked. By noon, the man who thought he owned everything owned nothing. Martha didn't fight. She just stood there, quiet, watching it all slip away. Clara looked at her once, long enough to understand something most people don't learn until much later in life. Sometimes the deepest hurt doesn't come from enemies. It comes from the ones who chose not to stand beside you. Days passed. Fences got fixed. Water ran again. Cattle slowly came back. Silas didn't take over the land. He just helped, the way a man helps when he doesn't need credit. Clara learned fast, because she didn't have the luxury of staying the same, not just how to run a ranch, but how to stand her ground. And somewhere between long days and quiet evenings, things started to change. She began riding out with him at dawn to check fences. He showed her how to read brands, how to spot trouble before it came close, and most evenings that they didn't need many words. Now I'll tell you something, friend. At some point in life, most of us will stand exactly where Claire stood. Tired, outnumbered, wondering if it's even worth fighting anymore. And sometimes the hardest truth to accept is this: not everyone who should protect you will. So let me ask you, when that moment comes, do you fold or do you stand anyway? And if this story stayed with you, even just a little, go ahead, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. There are more stories like this, and I'd be glad to share them with you. Everything you heard here is gathered and retold, with a few details adjusted to bring out the lessons and make the story clearer to follow. The visuals are created with AI to help carry the feeling of the story. If this kind of story isn't for you, that's all right. Get some rest. Take care of yourself. But if it is, leave me a comment. And if you've ever stood up for someone when no one else would, I'd like to hear that too. Tell me where you're listening from and what part of this story felt the most real to you. Because out here, stories like this aren't just about the past. They're about the choices we still have to make today.